Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course. You good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than you good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful February the 14th, 2020. Ronald Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I was a little disgruntled this morning. I woke up and went outside and found all these rose petals out there on my sidewalk and everything, and I called the police. Told them somebody had littered all these flowers in there on my sidewalk. They told me, no, sir, it's Valentine's Day.
It's Valentine's Day. It's all fair and love and war. It's amazing how sometimes, can't they just put them in your hand? I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports is also sponsored you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C, when you said the rose petals were left on were they on your lawn, on the driveway, or was it just somebody's dog came over and got your flowers? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they were all over my sidewalk, and I thought somebody was just coming out there dumping stuff, and I didn't realize it was 4th of July, and it was left with love instead of hate.
Yeah, it's always love, and hey, Valentine's Day is all good. Sometimes you hear about people throwing eggs on somebody's house or toilet paper up on the trees. I knew they do that down south, some of the schools. Some people were throwing chocolate around the neighborhood, Big C, so I like to pick it all up as much as I can. I do want to say, I want to make sure that we pay homage to all of our military veterans. We know a lot of people sometimes going through things, Big C, but we do have a chance for them to get help. The Veterans Crisis Line, and they are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and they are trained to give you help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, on this day that signifies love around the world, Charlton, we have to realize we need to love our military veterans and just every American, not just today, but every day.
Yeah.
And reach out and touch and help and give those people inspiration and hope. Suicide has become such a horrific disease in America, Charlton, and has afflicted so many of our great veterans as well as our everyday citizens in America.
Yeah.
The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is there, hopefully to stem the tide of this horrific disease. But we have to find a way to get everybody in touch with the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. Everyone doesn't have access to a phone, even though we think this is an able right in America, but everyone doesn't have access.
Yeah.
And if you see somebody in need or think somebody's in need, don't hesitate in making the call yourself, loaning them your phone. Let them talk to somebody who is not judgmental, but hopefully there to help, Charlton, and get through these troubled times that we're going through in America.
Very well said. And these people are trained to help people who are going through issues, whether it's veterans or civilians. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And hopefully they can get some help. Big C also launching the real estate TV channel coming up spring of 2020. The goal is simply to recruit 100 real estate brokers to put their property listings on TV. I was talking to a couple of brokers throughout Northern California today, and they're really excited about having a chance to go to their clients and say, we can actually put your property on TV. That means you have a chance to see it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, vision is a great thing for people to have a better understanding of something when they're looking to make that huge purchase.
The Big C team watching the Real Estate Channel, spring of 2020, really looking forward to everything that entails. You know, Big C, the economy is something else. And I know for me, I grew up and my grandparents, my parents, they were always reading the paper. In fact, I used to eat paper when I was a little boy, Big C. I didn't wait for Valentine's Day. I always ate the chocolate section for some reason. But I kind of some sad news that actually came out yesterday. I know we talk about having a prosperous economy, but when you think about one of the newspaper giants in the country, McClatchy newspaper, McClatchy News, they filed for bankruptcy. And they have a lot of debt and a lot of declining revenue, not because people are not reading, but because people are reading their news online. And I kind of feel for a lot of the beat writers that used to go out and cover, different news events. Now, what happens oftentimes is people just go online and they copy and paste the story, and it's on print it's online as opposed to print. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is modern mechanization, Charlton, not just in the newspaper industry, but every industry in America where you needed manpower decades ago to operate anything. You don't need that anymore.
No.
The electronic age has changed the way we think and do business and live in America.
Yeah.
When you think about the 24-hour news cycles on television, you don't have to wait until the evening news at 6 o'clock anymore to get what's going on in mainstream media, Charlton. You can get it 24 hours a day as well as in sports. So as we look at what we want to have as modernization in America and around the world, things fall by the wayside because of that. The auto industry is one of those things where it used to take a couple dozen people to build a car. Now you need a half a dozen and a bunch of robots.
Yeah.
So everything has changed through mechanization, and because we're so hungry for instant gratification, whether it's in sports, whether it's just in news media, Charlton, this is going to be the dinosaur at the end of the day, the newspaper.
Yeah, it really is a dinosaur. You know how we tell people to read, and reading is fundamental. It's just a different way of getting the information, and it's coming in the palm of your hand. It's amazing. Everybody has a book now. It's in the palm of their hand, called that cell phone or that tablet, and a lot of people have that too. It's kind of a good and bad thing, but they have to reorganize over $700 million in debt, and they're talking about 30 newspapers trying to keep them afloat while they reorganize more than $700 million in debt. 60% of that will be eliminated, and the plan, if it wins in court approval, of the 163-year-old family publisher, it will be turned over to hedge fund Chatham Asset. Isn't that amazing? It was a family business started 163 years ago, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's how America was 163 years ago. Most business was started by family people.
Yeah.
But as we looked at how things have changed over time, when you think about how the radio was the instant mode of information around America, Charlton, where everybody had a transistor radio.
Yeah.
And everybody didn't have a television. That was their entertainment. Once the television age came in, radios were phased out in many facets. And now when we have internet radio, people don't listen to transistor radios any longer. And as we look at televisions being mobile, where they used to only could be in a home, everything has changed, and modernization has changed the way that the world looks at things.
It really has, and I came across some information just the other day that I want to share, because in the broadcast business, and we're part of that too. Now, ironically, Big C, this coincides with seeing how a lot of newspapers are going out of business and shutting doors, and because they can go online and you can press with the send by pressing one button, you can send to all your news outlets, and then somebody reads it. Back in the day, they used to have writers and go write in those individual cities. So a lot of the small town news, that's going away for more of a broad news, kind of the Walmart approach or the Amazon approach to business. But I want to just make a message known. It's called the Broadcasters Foundation of America. Broadcasters Foundation of America. And the mission is for the Broadcasters Foundation of America to improve the quality of life and maintain the personal dignity of men and women in the radio and television broadcast profession who find themselves dealing with different acute financial needs due to critical illness or accident or advanced age or other serious misfortune. And sometimes when you're misplaced because of technology change, I had no idea that this information was there to help people, Big C. That's actually a good thing. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's retirement in any industry, Charlton, that's there. And when you have unions, that's what unions are for, is to help people when things change. But as we look, in mechanization, Charlton, it's always going to change. People are going to be left behind.
Yeah.
You either, move along with new technology or you get left behind with old technology.
That's very true. I'm still not giving up my VCRs, Big C. And I do want to just say to everybody, you can get some help. You just got to know that it's there. It's called the Broadcasters Foundation of America. That's Broadcasters Foundation of America. And hopefully if you reach out to them, you'll find that they'll be able to help you too. I want to just ask you, because I forgot to, and I feel, I was told many times that I don't listen. Okay, it's not that I don't listen. Sometimes I just don't remember, Big C. I think a lot of men have that problem. And I think you let me into it. But were you trying to share your plans for Valentine's Day, and I went right into the news? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, my plans for Valentine's Day were very simple: to get up and have a wonderful day, Charlton, have a wonderful meal. But like I said, I was tripped up with all those roses on the sidewalk this morning.
Yeah, sometimes when I was a kid growing up, they would have the newspaper delivery route, and a lot of young boys or girls, they could go out and deliver newspapers, and then they would find a way to go, say hi to the neighbors and make sure that people were doing good. And now maybe they have a flower delivery service too, Big C. I saw a lot of men running around trying to buy flowers today. I think my romantic evening will be watching television, Big C. That's not the most romantic thing to do, but it's all fair in love and war, and I appreciate that. I know we have the NBA All-Star competition starting up this weekend in Chicago, the Windy City. I think it's going to be around 1 degree for a lot of good old boys. But it made my heart happy. Today, President Obama, made a surprise appearance at the NBA Cares event. And we talk about that military hotline to reach out to people who need help. And NBA rising stars were assisting under, under-resourced Chicago schools, trying to help them get some help. It's great to have President Obama show up. And he knows as much about a lot of the basketball players that are 19, 20, 23 years old. That was a nice feeling, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's a native Chicagoan, Charlton, so he's in his hometown, making an appearance like many other celebrities in the All-Star event, Charlton, to come in and help and do his part in his native city.
Yeah, and I think that the irony there, Big C, and everybody has their own flavor. I know when we had the State of the Union, it was POTUS that gave a Presidential Medal of Freedom to Rush Limbaugh. And I don't know who he freed, because he's always talking about locking up people of color, especially those south of the border, Big C. So he hasn't freed anybody as far as I know. And then President Obama trying to help underprivileged kids in the Chicago area. I know the POTUS is going to be at some race. I think he's going to have, sound off the start of the race. But I thought it was great that President Obama's actually reaching out to a lot of young boys and young men, even though we consider them grown men now. They're still in their 20s. That means a lot, especially for African Americans. We haven't had the chance to do that, really, never really, even though I hear the first president of the original 13 colonies was actually African American, but that's not really well known in the history books. I don't know if you've ever met a president, but what does that mean when young men have a president that will come out and pull up his sleeves and also try to help young people and not just stand on TV and blast people? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, a lot of political figures have always made that photo op opportunity to come out and help. Anytime a politician goes out, it's great for the media. But, education starts at home.
Yeah.
We can't rely on other individuals to have pseudo-facto parents out there saying, okay, they're going to make a difference in my child's life.
Yeah.
It's just like when we talk about kids getting scholarships to go to college, and everyone expecting for that college to raise the kids. No, it starts at home. If you don't have a solid foundation at home, Charlton, it's going to be very difficult for you to go to an event and say all of a sudden my life is going to change because I've gone to this event. It comes down to parenting, and that's the biggest problem we have as an African-American culture in America, is lack of parenting, because we have young grandparents now that are in their 30s. Instead of being in their 50s and 60s becoming grandparents, they're becoming grandparents in their 30s. So that lets you know the plight of the children moving forward. And that's a big problem in the city of Chicago, is that if you don't have that foundation at home, It doesn't make any difference what type of event you go to or that person shows up.
Yeah.
You still have to go back and live in that home environment every day.
Yeah, and I know it's always important to put our hands out and reach out and touch somebody's hand, especially your own flesh and blood. So I really appreciate seeing President Obama there and the effect that it had on a lot of people. I know when you think about what makes the NBA slam dunk competition, must-see TV for a lot of people, irrespective of how old people are or young, if they tend to love the game of basketball, the innovation and the creativity in the NBA All-Star Dunk Contest. I think for me, and I want to get your thoughts on a couple of players, I still think about Vince Carter and his epic dunks in the 2000 dunk contest. But there's one that he actually hung on the rim through his elbow, Big C. I've always thought that he was amazing, and the fact that's 20 years ago, and he's still playing in the NBA. I don't know what he takes for his vegetables, but I'm sure he's not eating too much chocolate. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, nobody that was in that dunking contest other than Vince Carter back in 13 is still in the NBA. All of their careers ended in 2013, everybody else that was in that dunk contest. But I go back to 1976 to the original dunk contest. To me, Charlton, there still has not been a dunk contest better than that. That dunk contest had Larry Keenan in it. It had George Gervin. It had Artis Gilmore. It had Dr. J and David Thompson. You're talking about going from a height differential of 6'4" all the way up to 7'2". One of the most spectacular dunk contests that was ever put on. David Thompson was known as the human highlight film.
Yep.
Larry Keenan was just a skywalker at 6'9", and everyone knows of the infamous Dr. J.
Yeah.
Artis Gilmore is 7'2". I mean, it wasn't much for him to dunk a basketball, but they even had the Iceman, the most renowned outside shooter in the NBA of that era, being a dunk contest. You had the whole gamut of superstars in basketball.
Yeah, that's always great going back in history. And when you think about, I said Vince Carter has been, I know people talk about Michael Jordan and Dominic Wilkins, but still Vince Carter did something that I still remember of all the years that I've seen the slam dunk competition. But remember Spud Webb back in the 80s, of course Vince Carter in 2000, and then Aaron Gordon in 2010, some of the most creative, I think you would say the dropping slams. Spud Webb, I remember it was 1986. He became the shortest person at that time to ever dunk or actually win the slam dunk contest in 1986. He was listed at 5'7", but a lot of people say he's about 5'5", 5'6", point guard. He defeated 6'8" Dominic Wilkins, the human highlight film, Big C, and with 2 perfect 50-point dunks in the final round, and one of which he bounced a pass off the backboard himself. Have you ever seen someone that's about 5'7", 5'6" maybe, that could get up and dunk behind his back, 2 hands? Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, Charlton, when I was in college, we had a guy, his nickname was the Helicopter.
Yeah.
And this guy, Rovan, he was only about 5'10", but he had a 44-inch vertical leap. He could actually out-leap Spud Webb. This guy, I mean, he was phenomenal to watch him play college basketball back in those days. I mean, it was something else to behold. I mean, to get an opportunity to showcase in the NBA, people think that that's the best that they've ever seen.
Yeah.
There's some guys who have never been in the NBA that could out-dunk anybody that's ever been in an NBA dunk contest.
Yeah, I remember in college there was a guy, we called him T. Hunt. He actually played up at Washington State, and then he got a chance to play in the CFL. But he was about 5'8", 5'9", solid muscle. One year he went away and came back, and he looked like he put on 40 pounds of muscle. I said, man, T, you've been working out hard. He said, no, he was taking the juice. I didn't know what he meant. I thought he meant like orange juice, Big C, but he took a different kind of juice. But he could dunk a basketball standing flat-footed under the rim and just jump straight up with 2 hands and slam dunk and hang onto the rim. I've never seen that, but maybe that's why so much orange juice, Big C, you thought it was helping him, the juice?
Well, yeah, like I said, you get a chance to showcase yourself once you've made it to the NBA.
Yeah.
There are more great athletes that don't get into the league than that does. It comes down to a popularity contest, being in the right place at the right time. But they can hold a dunk contest of non-NBA players anytime that they wanted to. And I would really love to see that. They talk about making the dunk contest more exciting.
Yeah.
I would love to see them bring a group of guys that are not NBA players in and let them participate against NBA players. And let's really find out who the best dunkers are.
Oh, isn't that something? They had a show like that. It was called, I think it was called Pros versus Joes. and they actually had that kind of scenario, and I'm sure a lot of the guys would not want to get embarrassed. I've seen some guys in Oakland and Los Angeles that can flat out play some basketball, and I'm sure everyone has their own story all over the country. Again, going back to Vince Carter, my favorite dunker, it was called the honey dip dunk, in which he stuck his whole forearm through the rim, and it's like icing on the cake. Was one of the greatest performances in contest history. But another player back in 2001, Baron Davis, he tried to put out his own, great thing. It was a spin and a trick name, 9 years later adding the windmill, naming it the blind man's bluff. Baron Davis also knew how to throw down Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we've seen all the dunks that can come about in the NBA dunk contest. I mean, there's nothing new. But like I said, I have to revert back to that first dunk contest. And, everyone thinks about Michael Jordan taking off from the free throw line. Dr. J did that in 1976, taking off from the free throw line, actually winning the dunk contest. And he won it off of popularity. Larry Keenan actually outright won the dunk contest, just like Dominique Wilkins beat Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan was a more populous name at the time, but everyone knows that Dominique won the dunk contest.
Yeah.
But, it comes down to who's a fan favorite more than anything else.
Yeah, I remember Andre Iguodala back in 2006, and he asked his teammate Allen Iverson at the time to kiss a pass off the backside of the scoreboard while he ran in from the corner and grabbed the pass and reversed it into the loop. And when you think about how long men have been playing this game, there's a lot of African-American talent. And I wish, maybe I don't wish it, it just is what it is. Why have African-American men dominated the slam dunk contest? But we're not the only group of people that's in it. There's a lot of Europeans that play NBA basketball now. Is it a thing where people are maybe intimidated by it? There was a movie with Wesley Snipes back in the day, The White Man Can't Jump. I think all men can jump, but maybe I'm naive. Is that a sport that maybe people shy away from, unlike baseball, the home run derby? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's about what you have creativity in a dunk. There's been plenty of white guys that have gotten into the NBA dunk contest. I mean, Tom Chambers could jump as well as anybody during his day when he was in the NBA playing with the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
I mean, he has one of the most posterizing dunks in NBA history in an actual game. If you go back and you want to see somebody getting dunked on, Tom Chambers has one of those top 10 dunks of all time in NBA, and he was white.
Yeah, I mean, it's about who can ball. It doesn't matter what color you are. However, we always talk about the height matters and all that jazz, and size matters, and color, race matters, and all that. But when you think about some of the guys that we talked about, Spud Webb earlier, recall Nate Robinson also back in 2006. It's amazing. At 5'9", he's a 3-time slam dunk contest champion. And it's amazing how you don't have to be a 6'10" guy to win it. What is it about the guys that are 5'9" that have won it more than one time, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I think when you look at a guy who is short, it's almost like the degree of difficulty when they're going out and dunking. I mean, it's much easier for a guy who's 6'8", 6'9", to get above the rim. But when you look at the verticality of the shorter players, especially Nate, who had such verticality when he was playing. He was one of those guys with one of those 40-plus vertical leaps out of the University of Washington. He was a tremendous jumper in his NBA career.
Yeah. Now, I told you my favorite dunker, and I'm just saying because Vince Carter, he hung on the rim, and it still stays in my mind even more impressive than what Michael Jordan did or Dominique Wilkins and those guys. But Dwight Howard called him Superman. It was a 2008, the iconic dunk that he had, where he came out and put on the Superman cape. Never really played like that throughout his career. Occasionally he did, but I thought a guy that would be 7 feet tall and built the way that he was would have had a more, dominant career in the NBA. But the fact that he's still playing, I think I heard him in a conversation once said he lost a little bit of focus at one time. He's playing much better now. But does that ring a bell to you when he put on the Superman's cape and came through and slammed it? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, like I said, I've seen most of the dunks. But, I mean, if you go back to the 70s, and most young guys like yourself don't recall the 70s because they weren't on ESPN, and that's what guys of today remember is what's on ESPN. The real basketball guys know the dunks that were before ESPN, and none of the dunks have ever gotten better than that.
Yeah, even when you think about that, a guy that played at the University of Nevada, JaVale McGee, back in 2011, he had a performance that was all about, multiples. The first, you dunk 2 balls in 2 different hoops with absolute ease. But I think he's about 7 feet tall. But that was impressive. But I still go back to Vince Carter.
See, Larry Keenan had done that back in 1976.
Back in the 70s, yeah. Just wasn't on TV as much. And then also another dunk that I was impressed by came out of the University of Oklahoma. It was 2011. Blake Griffith, he leaped over a Kia. At that time, a lot of people didn't know what Kia was, but it's part of the NBA legacy. The most underrated dunk was actually part of Baron Davis that threw a lob for Griffin off the sunroof. And there was also a choir for some reason. But I'd never forget him dunking over that car. I've tried to jump over a car too, Big C. I didn't quite make it as far as he did. Big C, I was on the ground, kind of like those roses out in front of your property, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the great leapers that have always played in a dunk contest, anybody who takes off from the free throw line technically could jump over a car in an NBA dunk contest. He did it as a prop. Props are nice at times, but it's the creativity that you come up with during the dunk.
Yeah, and Gordon, you talked about some of the old-timers back in the 70s. When I talk to a lot of the young kids, the AAU group, they think about 2016 because that's when the great Aaron Gordon came on. And not only did he complete an incredible dunk, it was over the Orlando Magic mascot at that time, but he also jumped over a lot of other stuff while he spun around and kind of like a hoverboard over the basket. I remember it seemed like he had his butt as high as the rim. I said, no, that can't be a real regulation rim. And you never know, but I've never seen a guy get that high up over the rim and still have the ability to come from behind his back outside of watching some guys on Oakland playgrounds back in the day. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've seen dunk contests, Charlton, where guys have been behind the backboard and reached around and dunked the basketball. So, I mean, and like I said, the dunk creativity, we've seen all the dunks that you can ever see in the NBA. It's just a matter of recycling being going on right now.
Yeah, it's part of something that I think a lot of African American men have just grabbed a hold of, and just like the home run derby, where it's more, I guess, more ethnic groups are part of the home run derby in baseball. It's something that a lot of men pride themselves on, being able to dunk the ball, and I really appreciate seeing how athletic a lot of people are. So the All-Star Weekend scheduled for 2020 is, of course, in the city of Chicago. I know Chicago, as well as Los Angeles or New York, a lot of people say they play the best, basketball. I don't know if that's the case at all, but I think the city of Chicago will do a great job in showcasing this. We have Team LeBron James versus Team Giannis. I know there's a lot of hype to it, but they're changing the structure of a lot of things that's happening this year. I think a lot of people are going to be intrigued by the new All-Star game. There should be plenty of highlights from, the rising stars of the game, Saturday night's events prior to the main show. And I think the thing that's made it so, not only the three-point challenge, but the All-Star game, unlike the NFL All-Star game, is actually a 3-day weekend. It's almost like a Super Bowl, if that makes any sense. Is that a good idea, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you think about it, there's only so much of it that's seen on television. When you think about, starting on the Friday night, culminating on Sunday. And when you look at the All-Star game, it's really lost its luster as being an All-Star game because nobody really plays hard. When you have an over and under on a game of 301 points, you know that there's not going to be any defense played, and it's more of an exhibition than it is an All-Star game.
Yeah.
And they maybe need to change the name of it to the NBA midseason, exhibition instead of the All-Star game, because the only thing that's All-Star is about the players getting there, but no one puts any effort into it. No one's playing defense. It's about, just like the dunk contest, how elaborate can you be on game day?
Yeah, and you also need, unlike the Super Bowl, I guess the Super Bowl is a little bit the same. You would have these events that start on television on Friday, which is today, the Rising Stars practice, of course, and then the Hall of Fame class of 2020, the announcement for that, that's going to be great, and a poignant tribute to Kobe Bryant also. And then we have the celebrity game, the Rising Stars game. So there's a lot of games that they'll have, and then Saturday on the 15th, they will have the All-Star practice and Media Day, which is like what the NFL is doing now too. And then you have the Adam Silver media availability. What can Adam Silver bring to media availability that players can't bring to? Do you think that might be maybe a low light, or is it must-see interview, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, in trying to compare the NBA to the NFL, I mean, that's like night and day. The NBA is light years behind the Super Bowl. Nothing compares to the Super Bowl as far as the desire for people to want to take part in it, be a part of it, to be around it. And what they put on as far as a week-long festivity, exposing players of the past and present, Charlton, of the game, the NBA is trying to take a twinkle from that.
Yeah.
But, the commissioner's media availability, that's what he's doing as his State of the Union address, basically where the league stands and where it's looking to go to from this point on.
Yeah.
But as far as people wanting to be around NBA players, it's a different thing. They want photo ops and they want autographs.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl brings nothing but electricity.
Yeah, it does that. And so it's about making the people feel comfortable. You know how we always talk about the expansion of media and how we talked about artificial intelligence will put people out of work. Like 30% of the population, a lot of the jobs will be
You
displaced.
talked about the newspaper.
Yeah.
That's artificial intelligence. As you keep raving about, the newspaper goes by the wayside because of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, we got to find a way to stop those robots, Big C. But I wanna talk to you about something in the second half that I think is very fascinating, especially when we talk about 400 years of history and also Black History Month. We'll take the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. And the apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You were here. Welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Also want to mention launching the Big C Real Estate TV, the Big C team, in spring of 2020 for real estate brokers to list their properties, and it makes it more apparent to any homeowner. If your property's on TV, you know that they're going to have more eyeballs taking a look at that. So we really look forward to that too. Coming, it's amazing. Think about this. The mothership, they acquire the rights to the NBA in Africa, Big C. It's amazing how we talk about the European expansion and coming into the NBA. There's a lot of players now that come from Europe with a lot of experience. A lot of guys are doing one and done in college if they can, or even some players foregoing college altogether. Fans of the NBA in Africa will be able to watch the NBA on the mothership, as well as, I think as of February 14th, the Walt Disney Company announced today that after acquiring the rights to the league across the continent, isn't that amazing? Most players, we call them African Americans, and we know the whole lineage of the Middle Passage. But now, where the root of the NBA started was never really acknowledged, but it's starting to now because there's more money coming out of African companies too. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, actually, the NBA started before people realized it down in South America. The Anchors used to play a game that was similar to basketball, that they shot a ball through a metal hoop that was on the side of a court.
Yeah.
I mean, the NBA getting the ESPN getting the rights to NBA basketball in Africa, Charlton, that's about monetizing what they do. It's not about global expansion. The NBA will never play outside of the U.S. as far as regular games. I mean, Canada's still part of the U.S. When you think about it, Buffalo's part of the U.S., so Canada can be part of the U.S.
Yeah.
But the NBA is looking at revenue. This is generating more and more revenue by having television rights around the country. And ESPN and ABC is the largest carrier of NBA games, so they have to increase their market shares to pay that huge revenue bill that they have.
Yeah, I think it's nice just to have the name that they're expanding in Africa, as opposed to just going over and stealing all the diamonds, Big C. Now it seems like they're going to be at least given a chance to create revenue, which also creates jobs too on the African continent. So I don't think anyone can be really too disappointed with that. I want to just get your thoughts on this induction, for the NBA and taking care of their Hall of Famers. Big C, Kobe Bryant will be, posthumously inducted. Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett, they headline the Hall of Fame finalists. And when you think about it, Kobe Bryant, obviously known as the Mamba, played 20 years. I don't recall how long Tim Duncan played, but I think right about that same time. and I think they both played longer than Kevin Garnett. But isn't it amazing that of all the players that have ever played the game of the NBA, I would think at one time Tim Duncan looked like he may be the least talented, but he has as many championships as Kobe and more than Kevin Garnett. But he was never really a media-savvy kind of personality, if that makes any sense. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, all three of those players played 20 years each in the NBA. Tim Duncan, of the three, was the first one to be the first overall number one draft pick. Kevin Garnett was a first overall draft pick in the NBA. Tim Duncan is the only one to do 4 years of college at Wake Forest. Kevin Garnett came right out of high school to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Kobe came out of high school to the Charlotte Hornets when he was drafted into the NBA.
Yeah.
All of those players had hoisted the NBA title, Charlton, throughout their career. Tim Duncan, he did it in a quiet way down in San Antonio. And if you look at the history of the San Antonio players, no one has ever been a media darling down in San Antonio. They have all been low-key. They've gone out and done yeoman work. And Tim Duncan, you admire what he did in his career. This is a guy who dominated at two positions as a pro player, at power forward and at center.
Yeah.
And as you say, hosted 5 NBA titles down with the San Antonio Spurs.
You know how we talk about the big men and I won't call it small men, because when you look at the Houston Rockets, there's still a lot of guys that are around, between 6'4" and 6'8", Big C. But you don't find 7-footer, so maybe they call that small man. In regular society, 6'8" is pretty good size. But contrast the career, because you like to go back and talk about some of the old timers that were dominant. I know you're really a fan of Bill Russell, but wherever Kevin Garnett's game ranked, they both played for the Boston Celtics. Garnett went around, played Minnesota also, and then of course the great Tim Duncan played, I believe, his whole career down in San Antonio. Big man on big man. How would you draw any comparisons to what some of the guys back in the day did, like a Russell? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at Tim Duncan and how his game translated into NBA, he was a more athletic Bill Walton. This was a guy with a keen eye for passing the basketball. He was team player, Charlton. He could hit the boards. He could score when he wanted. He knew how to play the basketball off the backboard. This was a guy who had a pure bank shot, just like Bill Walton did. And this was a guy who stayed healthy, but Bill Walton didn't stay healthy throughout his career. So if I was comparing Tim Duncan to anybody, it would be a young Bill Walton when he was in Portland. When I look at Kevin Garnett reminds me a lot of big men that you see today's game that play the 4 position. I mean, he was Kevin Durant before Kevin Durant. He just didn't shoot as much as Kevin Durant, but he had a similar type game as Kevin Durant had. And I would cross him in the middle between Olajuwon and Kevin Durant. He was that tweener. He wasn't a big guy. He was slender. He could move with the basketball. He could play all the positions except for point guard, realistically. So I would, put him in the middle between Kevin Durant and Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to do something for Kevin Garnett because it's amazing. One of my brothers and I laughed about it because we really loved it. Anything's possible! I think he did that after they got the win over the LA Lakers in the NBA Finals. They were in Boston. I'll never forget how excited he was at TD Gardens. And just one of those moments that you think about how these men are all wealthy. All of them are famous to some extent, but they still have that little boy that comes out when they finally win a championship that can be so elusive to a lot of players. Now, I want to draw another comparison because I hear coming up to the All-Star game, it's great when you have the old-timers and the nouveau riche players talk about who was better and who won because they were a media favorite. When you look at Michael Jordan, of course, he has the championships that Dominique Wilkes, never was able to attain. But when you look at Michael Jordan and you look at Dominique Wilkins, those guys could kind of like float on air. And so everyone had a lot of respect for their game. Anyone back in the day that was pre, ESPN and all the sports stations that made you think, you know what, this guy can fly also, Big C, your thoughts?
Jonathan, there was so many players that flew back in the day that, guys don't even know the name of. Connie Hawkins was a Skywalker when he played the game. I mean, he was Julius Erving before Julius Erving. And so when we think about players of an era, and, we talked about the 76 dunk contest,
yeah,
where David Thompson was in, and George Gervin. They had one of the most electrifying scoring title chases in basketball history, Charlton, that came down to the final night of the season, and both of these men had to score a certain amount of points to win. Gervin scored 74 on that night. Thompson scored 62 to win the title.
Yeah.
So when you think about guys, Larry Keenan, could jump as high as anybody that's ever played in the game. I talked about Tom Chambers, a white guy who could play above the rim anytime he wanted. Rex Chapman, another white player out of the University of Kentucky, played with the New York Knicks.
Yeah.
There's been so many great guys that could jump with the basketball. Think about Sean Kemp, who played in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
So we've had a plethora of guys over the years that could play any position. The thing about the fans now, yourself and a lot of younger guys, you know what you saw on ESPN.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks that's when basketball started. No, basketball had been revolutionized long before ESPN came around.
Let me throw another name at you that is, to me, of course, Hall of Famer. Maybe not as, when you think about a guy by the name of Rick Barry, I know he's done okay in media, and his sons have also played the game of basketball and also commentating. But he was considered one of the well-rounded players that really may have been a star based on his numbers. He averaged 25 points throughout his career, 2.8 rebounds, 4.9 assists per game. So in NBA standards, no matter what era, that would be, I think, Hall of Fame numbers. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. But I've never saw Rick Barry play. I've heard about him, but I don't think, well, let me get your opinion. Where would he rank if he were on the court today trying to lace him up? The numbers are good, but was the competition more difficult to score 28 points? Would that be 30 points a day? Or would it be 20 points a day based on competition? Big, your thoughts.
Rick Barry was a scorer. Rick Barry was a scorer when he was at the University of Miami. Rick Barry was a scorer when he was in the ABA. He was a scorer and a champion in the NBA. He was one of the greatest free throw shooters of all time with his underhand free throw shot. Calvin Murphy ended up breaking his record. You talk about diminutive players in the NBA. Calvin Murphy out of the University of Niagara and with the Houston Rockets at 5'9", still holds the NBA record up until Steph Curry broke it for free throw percentage in a season. And this was the toughest guy in the NBA at 5'9", but Rick Barry could play because he was a shooter. And that's the thing that people don't understand.
Yeah.
You could be a guy going out having handles, dribbling the basketball, but shooters are the thing that in any era can play.
Yeah.
And Rick Barry could knock it down from the floor as good as anybody, from the 2 or the 3 arc.
Yeah.
And that's what you don't have with players in today's game. You don't have the pure shooters anymore in the NBA because you don't make the highlight reels on being a shooter.
Yeah.
You make the highlight reel on going to the rim.
Yeah.
And that's where the art of the game is lost. The art of the game of being able to shoot the ball out on the floor, off the dribble, is a lost art in the NBA. And so when you talk about guys who played in that era,
yeah,
that's what they were. They were shooters. Pistol Pete Maravich, there's nobody that has a better handle than he does in the NBA today.
Yeah.
Pistol played in the 70s and still the greatest scorer in college basketball history. But his handle, other than his knees failing him early in his career, his handle was better than anybody in the NBA. People talk about Allen Iverson.
Yeah.
Allen Iverson could not handle the ball the way Pistol Pete could.
Really? That's amazing. I know that's a very high stature. Another guy that his numbers were actually better than Rick Barry when it comes to rebounds, 6.1 rebounds per game, 5.6 actually assists per game. The great Clyde Drexler averaged 24 points per game throughout his career. In 1983, the first-round pick, the number 14 choice by the Portland Trail Blazers. I think the only thing that may have hurt Clyde the Glide is he was always second fiddle to guys like Michael Jordan and even a Dominic Wilkins, even Patrick Ewing, if that makes any sense. Give me your feeling on how Clyde the Glide would measure up to what players are doing in this era, Big. So your thoughts?
Clyde Drexler was just an average guard when he was in the NBA. He's not better than the guards that they have in Portland now, in Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum.
Yeah.
That backcourt is better than what Clyde Drexler was when he was in Portland. So when you look at Clyde Drexler, yes, he was in an era of a lot of great players, but he was never a perennial all-star that could dominate the NBA.
Yeah, I think so many times as people get older, their fantasy grows and say, oh my God, this guy was amazing. But I know you saw a lot of these guys play in person, and that's why I'm always, fascinated by just learning about some of these great players. And that's why I was asking you earlier about Tim Duncan. But Tim Duncan, he replaced the Admiral, David Robinson, who came out of the Academy, Big C, and one of the legit 7-footers that was chiseled like a runner. He had the upper body like an outside linebacker, but he was not as dominant as Tim Duncan. And a lot of those guys down that played at San Antonio, they were a little bit, I guess, not as media savvy. But the Admiral, your thoughts on how he would rack up in today's era, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, David Robinson reminded me a lot physically of Artis Gilmore, who played down in San Antonio prior to the Admiral showing up. But when you think about David Robinson, what he possessed, he was an athlete playing basketball. That's what he was. And I don't know if Tim Duncan took over for him because they played side by side. It was more like with Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson when they were playing together down there. So, you know, when I think about those players and what they brought to the game, Charlton, I mean, every era has its own thing as far as what it allows us to see and understand. And like I said, so many people today only rely on what they see on the highlight shows, thinking that that's where basketball starts and basketball ends. But that's, as you talk about newspapers going by the wayside, because people refuse to understand by reading and knowing what happened throughout the history of this great game. And so they forget about those guys that they have to read about because they only want somebody to tell them that this is the only people that were great in any era of basketball.
Yeah, and I still think, I know I never saw Wilt Chamberlain play outside of some highlights, of course, and I know everybody has their own opinion, but I would still say, and not because he's the NBA scoring leader, but when I think of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I remember watching him play at UCLA. I know Lou Alcindor, and then going into Milwaukee and coming to play for the Lakers, and they had Showtime. I think Kareem, man, it would be great to see a statue of Kareem on somebody's plaque. I mean, everybody has a statue outside of their arena. In Chicago, they got Jordan. They're always putting people places. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he symbolizes a guy that could do it all. He didn't have a three-point shot and didn't need it. Could you imagine if he could do what they do now and had a three-point shot to his game, how many more points he would have scored? But his sky hook, I mean, they could put a statue of Kareem with the sky hook out front of Staples Center, even though he made his fortune at the Forum. Your thoughts on Kareem? Anyone ever like him, Big C? Your thoughts?
The greatest player to ever play the game. Like I said, you guys live off of what you saw in the Sports Center.
Yeah.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a guy that changed the way that basketball was played. He has the shot that nobody's ever been able to emulate. You think about the guys you talk about in the dunk contest. They're all doing the same dunk.
Yeah.
It's just a different version of it, Charlton, but they're all dunking a basketball. You don't see anybody going out sky hooking in a basketball game. This guy did it for 22 years in the NBA.
Yeah.
No one was ever able to defend that shot. That's how great he was and how he dominated the game. So when you think about a guy's influence on the game, Michael Jordan, the way he played basketball, did not change or revolutionize the NBA or college basketball. But what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did, the former Lou Alcindor, it revolutionized high school basketball. It revolutionized college basketball. It revolutionized the NBA. So when you want to talk about somebody's influence on the game and how great they were, it's not about you made a highlight reel and we want to see you make this dunk. Because, I mean, you could put the highlight reel together, the greatest dunkers of all time, and you'll have, 50 different players on that highlight reel. But you put a highlight reel together of the shot that's most unique in NBA history, you're going to get Kareem on that reel alone by himself. Nobody else. That's revolutionizing a game.
That's what I would like to see, a statue or something when you show NBA basketball. I know we talk about Jerry West, Big C, but there's something about Kareem. It's recognized all over the universe. Think about the man, 7'2". He scored 38,387 points, averaged 24.6 points a game, without the three-point shot that a lot of guys make a living on today, but no one's learned to master the sky hook. More important, maybe not more important than scoring, because if you don't score, you don't win. His career totals include 17,440 rebounds. Now you have guys, they don't want to get 10 to 15 rebounds a game. 17,440 rebounds. Big C, your thoughts?
Do you know where that rank on the all-time list?
No, I don't.
Number one.
Isn't that amazing?
You know where he ranks on the all-time scoring list?
Number
one.
Yeah.
You know where he ranks on the all-time assist list? Number 5.
It's amazing. You know, on the blocks, he's 3,189 blocks, and it's amazing, 1,560 games. He broke records having scored most of his points, blocked the most shots and won the most MVP titles in 1989. The man, I just appreciate because he just had the basketball skills and the fundamentals that a lot of guys don't want to do. Maybe today there's more focus on the dunk, but I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I would love to have, something done for him in respecting guys the same way we do with Bill Russell. But I mean, maybe that's going to come in time, and I really look forward to that. I want to get on something, just your thoughts as we can close out what happened with all the scandal of Major League Baseball. I really think it's much ado about nothing. Were the Houston Astros cheating? Of course they were cheating. Was it called Spygate? That was a good old boy, your friend, the New England Patriots. They were also Belichick. They were caught, Spygate. And everybody has some type of gate. Deflategate, Spygate. Who was that good old boy from Kansas City? Brett, that had a cork in his bat. And then they still say Pete Rose is anathema to fairness in baseball. We know the steroid era. Everyone hated Jose Canseco, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds. They hated all those guys. But there's never been an era, going back to even 1919 World Series, Big C, and we have the Black Sox scandal, the Chicago White Sox, all that stuff. They still act like we got to spend a lot of time fixing what happened with Houston. Just give back the trophy, or at least put an asterisk by it, take it away if that makes any sense. Your thoughts?
Well, how do you give back a trophy of a world championship in a sport, Charlton, a professional? I mean, we're not talking about college kids where there is a really unfair advantage. But when you look at baseball, baseball has been a history of cheating ever since they played. I know when I was younger, and pitchers used to doctor up pitches with Vaseline and any other type of lubricant that they could get on the ball to make the ball break even more. We've had the cork bats, Charlton. We have the pine tar incidents. There's everything in baseball that has gone on that you can ever think about. And, here it is with the Astros. They want to talk about stealing signs and tipping off pitches and things of that nature. I don't care what you tip off in baseball.
Yeah.
Just like in the Barry Bonds era, you're going to make him give back all the home runs. You still got to hit the damn ball. I don't care if you know what's coming or don't come what's coming. Baseball is the only sport that you can fail in and be a success. If you hit the ball 1/3 of the time, you're the greatest player in the league that year.
Yeah.
You are an MVP if you hit the ball 1/3 of the time, and that's what baseball players aspire to be. That means you have an opportunity to be the most valuable player in the league. And they're talking about them giving back the trophy. Okay, so now you got to give back the MVP that Altuve won that year.
Yeah.
Do you give it to Aaron Judge even though he didn't win it? The thing about it, the players didn't vote on certain awards.
Right.
They may have won the World Series, but they didn't vote on certain awards. So everybody's going to go back and recast their vote. Think about how you're going to change history. I mean, you haven't changed history in the White House. You got a president cheating on everything else, so you're going to go back and change all of these things?
Yeah.
Think about how much America has to be changed if you go back every time there's somebody that did something improper. So, okay, we're going to rewrite the record books. We're going to rewrite the history books on every injustice been done in America.
Yeah.
What you do if you want to do something, you punish everybody on the Houston Astros. If it was egregious enough for it to be punishable, then you ban everybody for a year from Major League Baseball. Don't take away any awards.
Yeah.
You ban them for a year. See how well they do without a salary. That's what you do. You ban the owner. You ban everybody in the organization. So only people they can play with are minor leaguers. They have to bring all them up. We find out how good their minor league organization is. But you can't start taking away awards every time you say, okay, this guy cheated, because if you cheated and you didn't catch him beforehand, how do you punish him after the fact? That's like saying, okay, she's pregnant now, so we're going to punish her now instead of stopping the pregnancy before it ever had an opportunity to happen.
Yeah, well, I know everybody has their own flavor and how they want to punish people. For the Dodgers' sake, National League MVP Cody Bellinger, he says the Astros, Jose Altuve, that he stole the 2017 American League MVP away from Aaron Judge. When I saw Altuve, he was stealing bases, and he was getting on the base. Even if you know what pitch they're throwing, you still got to make contact with the bat. And part of that, no one can say you're cheating at that either. It's all, everybody want to complain about what happened in the past. I think it's much ado about nothing, especially we just went over the last 2 days of how many people in baseball have been cheating for a long time, and it actually makes the game fun. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. And the apps that I love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Also, I really appreciate the fact launching the Big C Real Estate TV in the spring of 2020. And I hope that we can get 100 real estate brokers to just look at listing their properties on television channel. They can keep doing all the other things they're doing, but I think it's great when we have that opportunity to do it on TV as well. Big C, just a little bit of NFL news is, I know XFL football, I was so hyped to see it, week 1. Week 2, I'm not really making plans for it. I'm sure I'll record some things and see what happens with that. But a long time, I won't say Hall of Famer, but Redskins released their cornerback Josh Norman, and then wide receiver Paul Richardson. I remember Norman, he was a shutdown corner many, many moons ago, but this short-lived when you have the chance to play more than a decade. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the coach that let him go when he was in Carolina was named Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
The head coach in Washington now is named Ron Rivera.
Yeah, you think you might know a little bit of something about that. And even with that being said, the biggest thing that we talk about is how do you fit in with the person that you're with now? Does your coach believe in you or not? Now, I told you about my friend. We call him T-Hunt. He put on about 40 pounds in the offseason. He can stand under a basketball rim, flat-footed, and dunk with the ball with 2 hands without running. Ravens offensive lineman James Hurst suspended 4 games for PED use. I think they're having in 2020 where Major League Baseball, they're not going to test for what's, the CBD or the marijuana version of it, Big C. I think the NFL's not that far behind. At what point in time do we really expect that our big, strong, fast athletes are putting on solid muscle without getting some kind of unfair advantage? Because they're not looking for the skinniest football player to recruit. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to be realistic, Charlton. When you know what the rules of engagement are when you sign an NFL contract, and everybody has nutritionists, they have trainers, they have doctors, and you have a list in the locker room, and you're passed out a list what you can and cannot ingest into your body, and you still feel that you want to cheat and you think that you can mask it over, you deserve to be suspended, because only stupidity is going to make you want to give up $1 million or $2 or $2 million in your contract by taking something that's illegal.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's just what did that good old boy say? He didn't know what they were putting. The boxer, he said he ate some bad contaminated meat. He wasn't my friend from Texas, but it was Canelo, I think, that said he had some bad meat. They know that these guys are doing something, and I think.
Well, put it this way, Charlton, in simplistic terms. You went to college, didn't you?
Yeah.
And even high school. And you had a teacher or a prof tell you, do not look at your notes. Do not have anything else on your desk.
Yeah.
If you do, we will pick up your test and you will fail. You were told that, weren't you?
Yep. At the same time, I got friends that graduated Cal Berkeley.
No, but I'm asking you that question about this. Were you ever told that in high school or college?
Yeah, I was, yeah. But at the
so if you would have put that on your desk and they saw that, you failed the test, didn't you?
Yep, that's true.
That's the same thing as a professional athlete. They tell you, if you put this in your body, you're going to be suspended for 4 games.
Yeah.
So I don't have any empathy for the guys who are willing to take the chance to lose a couple of $1 million because they've been told if they do it, this is what's going to happen to them.
Yeah, and I know that's part of it too. And I know so many people that got papers from Berkeley or even other colleges, and they weren't studying, they were just buying stuff. And they got away with it, but that's part of it.
We're talking about the guys that get caught. There's guys that never get caught in any professional league that do stuff wrong, that are doing improprieties, that are breaking the rules.
Yeah.
But you're told if you get caught using something, this is what's going to happen to you. And that's what we're addressing is the guys who get caught.
Yeah, the guys who get caught. But they are changing that substance issue. So when guys get caught, they won't lose their paycheck. But that's all fair and love and war. I really look forward to a great NBA. It's really more like a celebration for the All-Star break, the All-Star events. It's a 3-day event, and I hope that everybody stays healthy through all of it. I want to tell you, have fun on this beautiful Valentine's Day. May you find love, peace, and soul. Back in the day, the great Don Cornelius. Big C, back in the day, There was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we celebrate this Valentine's Day throughout the world and here in America, I want to put out something that I always like to celebrate on Valentine's Day, and that is the birth of Frederick Douglass, African-American abolitionist, who allowed for us to be at the point that we are as African-Americans in America today in co-hosting with President Lincoln the 14th Amendment.
That is absolutely amazing. We wish everybody a wonderful Valentine's Day and eat lots of chocolate, especially every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, is never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.